Hello, and welcome to another episode of the SCP podcast. My name is Patti Weiter. I'm the marketing chair for Society of Consulting Psychology. And today with me, I have one of our SCP members, Rob Fazio. Did I pronounce that correctly?
It's actually Fazio, but
Fazio.
I'm not offended at all. Say whatever you
Well,
want. Yeah.
that's something I usually try to work out before I launch into the podcast. And today I did not. So I apologize for that. But I really am excited to get to know you a little bit better. I think I saw you at the conference last year and
Yes.
probably in passing. But one of the reasons we have the podcast is so that we get to have a little bit more in-depth time with some of our members, get to know you, what your specialty areas are, and just, help us to build community. So I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. This is great. I love the format. I did my homework, watched some of the podcasts. I love what you're doing.
Yeah. So first off, getting to consulting psychology is sometimes a bit of a journey for people. They might come from different backgrounds that led you to here. So tell me a little bit about how you got to your career in in consulting psychology.
Sure. It was a pretty direct path as far as knowing what I wanted to do, but not knowing if I could actually do it. And so early on in my career, every good psychologist starts a podcast about their childhood, right? So I remember sitting on the couch literally, and my dad was an executive in New York City. We lived in Bergen County, New Jersey, and he worked very long hours, was very focused on family. But I remember him coming home, stressed out, and he would never complain about his people or his boss, but my mom would kind of fill in the blanks. She knew something was going on. And long story short, he worked for a very dysfunctional, dominant CFO in New York City. And you can imagine all that goes along with it, being stressed out, being under a lot of pressure, not feeling like you're valued. And I saw that take a toll on him. And I could see him come home and being stressed. And I think I didn't realize it, but I started to think work shouldn't be like this. Like there has to be a better way. And what I've learned through reflection is that lit somewhat of a fire underneath me, is like, okay, we need to figure out a way to even out the playing field. If someone is being dominated or mistreated, that they have ways to deal with that. So when I was going off to college, I went off to Penn State studying psychology. And most people were kind of gently trying to tell me, PhD may not be the best for you because they've seen my GRE scores and my, GPA. But I had a burning desire and passion for it. And we're watching the Olympics, and my mom said, you love sports and psychology. Why not sports psychology? Went into sports psychology, really got interested in the whole idea of mental state and performance and teams. And then when I went on to my traditional doctoral program, there was a woman named Dr. Susan Wilkes at VCU who had a consulting firm. So I got involved with that, started doing coaching, feedback. And one of my colleagues said, you should go to this conference. It's called the Society of Consulting Psychology. So I took out my credit card and
You're ready to go.
Went out there 2002, met a bunch of, grizzly veterans at this point, like Greg Pennington and Steve Kincaid and Melanie Kinzer. And they all were just so helpful in my transition and path from traditional psych into try to break into consulting. And that's how it started.
So over 20 years now, you've been a part of, the SCP community. It sounds like we're doing something to keep you around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's awesome. I would say weekly I'm in conversation with someone formally or informally from the community.
Wonderful. So, it's interesting what you bring from your background, having that sports psych background, having a family connection to someone who worked in an executive role and getting to witness that at the young age and have that fire to make this different. So now where you're at, what is something that you're working on that's really exciting currently in your career?
I think that the most recent work is around helping people that are dealing with a dysfunctional, dominant colleague or boss, helping them getting some agency and equipping them to be able to navigate that as well as, which is the more unpopular side, helping people who are actually this dysfunctional, dominant, maybe even bullies, helping them gain awareness into the value that they're losing and their impact, and that helping them realize they can actually turn it around. The reason why I say that that's less popular is that no one is naturally empathetic and understanding towards someone who's treating you poorly at work. All the attention goes to the person that is mistreated, understandably so. The challenge with that is we never change the cycle and the dynamic, and it keeps getting reinforced.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had a book that you came out with recently, correct?
I did. About a year ago, came out a book called Bullyproof. And the subtitle is Using Subtle Strength to Influence Alphas and Strengthen Society. So public service is something that's at my core. And I really felt like there has to be some sort of a movement to reach people and to kind of create some sort of a way, a pathway to people to support one another, but also outside of just their own selves and experiences, and trying to elevate others, you know, especially everything that, you know, we're going through in the world, whether it's politics or the economic climate. Pressure is never going to go away. And under pressure, we will go back to kind of focusing on ourselves as opposed to other people and our organizations and society.
Yeah. So you really want to have that scalable impact on society by being able to address some of these maybe overused personality strengths that we might be having in the workplace that lead to dysfunction.
Exactly. And so, you know, we all know, everyone in the business knows that oftentimes the people that get promoted are the most extroverted or the most aggressive, right? Or get the most delivery of whatever the product or service is. And we don't pay as much attention to the impact that is having. And so, yeah, I just had this wasn't by design, you know, Patty, but like somehow I started getting pulled into situations where there was a surgeon mistreating an anesthesiologist, or there was a hedge fund manager that was losing money because their traders weren't listening to them anymore. And it's amazing when you really try to get in there and understand. There's so much information and knowledge that isn't shared for fear of retribution. And I think about how much time is wasted on people ruminating about how they were treated, as opposed to their job or doing the work that they love.
Yeah. So we want people to be able to overcome those barriers, have the conversations that they need to be having so that they can be more effective in the workplace on both sides.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, I think that for people that do coaching and advising, we're not immune to triggers and getting pulled into interpersonal ways that people make you feel. And I found that oftentimes I would feel insecure working with a really senior executive that made so much money. And I would treat them as in the way in which they were triggering me. So it's like, if they felt more powerful, I would decrease my power or space. And what I realized was a lot of these people don't have the space to tell their story. And for me, what I did was try to shift to be empathetic, as if I was helping someone who was being bullied. And there was, that just became kind of a little bit of a secret sauce and like a way to open the doorway to conversations.
Yeah. So if you kind of reframed the way you were looking at the issue and not seeing them as the dominant one, that it opened you up to approach them in a different way.
Yes. So almost getting out of my own head and experience, and then making sure I'm focusing in on what that person needs. And right, wrong, or different, sometimes what a dominant personality or a bully needs is someone to hold that space so they can actually tell their story. And by the way, sometimes that bully is actually right in the stuff that they're doing. The way they go about it might be wrong, and I would never condone bullying. What I'm saying is, in our culture, we have a tendency to isolate these personalities, and we don't provide them the support. And then what that does is reinforce them and makes them double down on the way they
Yeah.
behave and act.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like they're just kind of getting their way out of a corner they've been backed into, maybe.
Yep. Yep. Or they're really insecure and they don't have the space to share that with anyone, because I've had doctors that are trained, that say basically they were trained, go into a meeting with a sword and a shield and don't show a chink in the armor. Right. And that's the way they got ahead. And so it's unwiring that, or trying to help them realize that there's more to work in life than using your sword.
So I know when we were speaking before, you mentioned an assessment that you use, or that you've been working on designing. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you. So it's called Motivational Currency, and it's based on David McClelland's work on social motives. So he was a psychologist at Harvard. And I always found that fascinating. When I was at Hay Group, I was trained in his work. And there wasn't a very business-focused practical tool based on that theory and research. So essentially, I took that and created an assessment that is kind of the child of situational leadership and motivation theory, right? So there's a skill-based aspect to it. But what I found is really helpful is take a surgeon or an executive, in a half an hour, they can get information that is non-threatening, that helps them to be more effective at influencing. And I'll share a quick story.
Yeah.
One surgeon I was working with kept getting feedback that he was disrupting the operating room because of the way in which he communicated. So he did this assessment. The 4 motivators are performance, people, power, and purpose. And I presumed performance was going to be his highest motivator by the way he operated and talked. Turns out purpose was his highest. And I was like, Doc, this is bizarre. And he's like, no, it's not. I've got 3 kids. I come from a military background. I didn't have a dad. I didn't get put through school. I am going to make as much money as I can by being the best surgeon as possible to give my kids a better life. But he never showed that to his people. And just that conversation of him elevating his purpose motive, sharing some of those stories, buffered some of the way that he was perceived.
Yeah. So shaking up a little bit of the way people have been interacting with each other, allowing them the space to be vulnerable, then maybe they can move forward in a different dynamic.
Right. And not fighting them on like, don't do this. It's like, do more of this. Or in that case, when he talked to patients, his bedside manner was incredible. And I'd say, well, why are you so good with them? He's like, that's my business. That's how I make money. So almost had to lay out to him, well, you're going to make more money if your staff isn't complaining about you.
Yeah.
You're making people cry. Right.
So, but it got to the heart of what was important to him. So
it did. It did. Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, it sounds like you have a lot of exciting things going on. And I know that there's probably going to be people that want to reach out and connect with you after they watch your episode. But I want to get to know a little bit more about you as a person outside of professional life. So tell me a little bit about what brings you joy outside of work.
There's so much. I was going to say golf because it's a challenge, but there hasn't much joy there lately. It's coaching, but in a different context. So I have a 7-year-old daughter named Reese, and I'm coaching her travel soccer team. So that, combination of being a parent and a coach is just a ground for learning and growth, right?
I've been there.
So, and what's cool is my favorite thing is, I guess, similar to with executives and turnarounds, it's the kids, still my daughter, that come in and they're scared, they're crying, they're running around the scrum. They don't want to take the ball from others because we taught them to be kind and helpful. And seeing them develop that competitive edge while still being kind, I really get a kick out of.
Yeah. So you get to use some of your things that you're learning in work in that setting, and then maybe even applying some of the things you learned through coaching young children into the settings at work. I do think there's a lot that can kind of cross-pollinate there. I have young children too.
Oh,
and
well, I don't know how you feel, but I've thought of contacting VCU and getting my money back for my doctorate after negotiating with children. So.
Yeah, I know. They push me to the limits of all of my skills that I thought I learned that. dealing with some of the most difficult employees I've ever had in my household. So
yeah, exactly. Right. And you can't deselect these clients, right? Yeah.
No, you've got to stick with them. And it's awesome though, to be able to see, like you said, sort of the growth that can happen when you do give that attention and give them some space to try some new things. It's awesome to be able to see them develop over time.
It is. It's very rewarding, and it's, you know, that whole idea around resilience of support and challenge, I really think is such a great foundational piece of coaching work.
Mm-hmm. And you get to use your sports psychology, I'm sure. So
exactly. Well, yeah, right.
Motivating 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Well, to close us out, we've got our conference coming up in February in Austin. SCP's always got different events going on. What would you say, if you think about, what you value most about your membership at SCP? What comes to mind for you?
Friendships. So I was very, fortunate to make some really strong friendships right off the bat in 2002. And if I had a better word for it, it would be deeper than friendships. Whatever the combination of friendship and professionalism is, as I mentioned, weekly, I'm probably texting or calling someone within the community to ask questions, which has been great. When you're out on your own, essentially, that becomes part of an extension of your business. And the other thing I would say is, I think the best people in the community are so giving and realize that the success pie is big enough, right? Like technically we should all be competitors, but we're not. There's so much giving. I really enjoy the helping of students, not be intimidated and kind of break into the field. So I have a lot of pride in the friendships and the support that I've gotten from colleagues over the years.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate you joining me. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you if they want to follow up?
Yeah, so I'm active on LinkedIn. I've got a bunch of free resources on getbullyproof.com. Okay. Those are probably the two best spots to catch me.
All right. Well, we'll make sure to include those links. And thank you for joining us today.
All right, Patty. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks.